T.O. Blaze.
Hey there, this is Tio bringing another Kerbal Space Program video. This is video 5 from my Astrophobia Career playthrough. In the last video I had a lot of fun using uh, the new science station on Kerbin, and thought I would do a little bit more of that in this next mission, these next couple videos that I've spliced together. So to kick it off, I'm going to go ahead and modify my little science return vehicle that I've been kind of playing with and working on. Um, just to give you a glimpse of my train of thought. I was kind of just working organically, thinking, okay, I need it to fly in the atmosphere. It needs to be like a plane, but obviously, at some point, whether I realize it at this point or not, it's going to be more like an orbiter, which hints the look already. But I am going to try to keep these air-breathing engines on it, and its purpose is to get science from the atmosphere, from orbit to the KSC runway, as close, like park it right next to the science lab. So it needs to be very nimble, easy to use, and easy to maneuver, and so forth. So I'm focusing more on its plane characteristics than its orbital and I guess deorbiting capabilities at the moment. So went ahead and tested my little plane, having some fun with that, and now I need to start thinking about a station to put in orbit for a plane like this to dock and collect science points from probes and other missions to the Mun and Minmus and so forth. So let me start working on a science return station. And basically, the idea with the station, it's going to have a little bit extra fuel if I were to build a reusable probe. So the probe would go out, and some of the science experiments would be reusable, and obviously some are not, like the Science Junior and the Mystery Goo. So I was thinking about I guess a expendable modular section with lots of Science Juniors and Mystery Goos on it, and I could maybe take those up all at once, and then once a pair of them has been used up, I could load it into my station and dispose of those and have some fresh pairs to go out and do other missions. That's kind of one of the ideas. Um, go ahead and work it on my staging. And there you see I'm kind of fiddling around with the solar panels. It's fun making stations. Sometimes I add things like those external fuel tanks. Not the best way to put fuel tanks, but it looks kind of cool. Gives the station some character. So, kind of testing the launch for now. And yeah, my return vehicle is not aerodynamic. I need to put a fairing around that. But I'm deciding, let me just send the station up by itself, and I'll work on that return vehicle later. So there you see I'm working with the Science Junior units and the Mystery Goos, making them kind of modular. Added that section to the top of the station. And one option is to send up a couple paired together. One option is to send them with their own docking ports. So really just an experiment at this point. I know I want them up there. Haven't decided what kind of ships are going to come back and forth, and whether or not they'll be reusable and so forth. I think I also, in my last video, would have upgraded my science tree. So now I've got the uh, science storage module that I forgot to include it. So I reverted my launch and went back and added it. And on that first attempt at the launch, I didn't include it because it's kind of a waste of time. But basically, I wanted to also take to put to use the staging, not the staging, but the control groups option. So I upgraded my VAB, and now I can set control groups. So I've got those Science Juniors and Mystery Goose set to controls. I was able to just use them in flight without having to actually select the components. Let's go ahead and put this thing in orbit and hopefully get a little bit of science on the way up, and I can test my re-entry vehicle, my orbiter, for lack of a better term. And let's get this thing circularized. I guess at some point during the launch, I realized the Science Junior Mystery Goo module was a good thought, but it doesn't have the docking ports on each individual unit. I'm not going to use it in that configuration, so I just went ahead and deorbited it. So now we got our station. Oh, it also didn't have a docking port, so the orbiter had no place to dock, I think. As I say that, it's got those radio ports. So yeah, I think it's just that I didn't like the configuration. So anyway, now it's time to send up the science return vehicle, the probe that's gonna get the science from the station back down to the science lab parked on the ground, so the scientists can run the experiments and get those extra science points. So this, I really tinkered with it a lot. Thankfully, I sped up the video 8 times, but I went back and forth with engine placement, and at one point I realized I'm going to need to maneuver this thing and dock it, so let's go ahead and add some monopropellant and some thrusters. And this whole time I'm failing to realize the lower stages are going to have to decouple, and this thing's not going to be able to deorbit itself. So in my first launch, it's going to have just the air-breathing engines on the orbiter itself, which is a silly mistake. But there you see, I'm just fixing the lower stages, getting the right amount of fuel. I don't need to waste a whole lot of fuel getting this thing up there. I even removed the middle stage. And now I've realized, okay, I need some uh, oxidizer, and I need some rocket engines. So I'm experimenting with these Werner engines, and I know I need to also consider the center of mass. So this is where it really starts to take more of an orbiter type shape. So I decided to go with the Werner engines mounted directly to the orbiter. I put some fuel tanks kind of hidden inside the body of it. So we'll test that and see how well it can deorbit itself. It doesn't need a whole lot of oxidizer, because once it gets into the atmosphere, I can turn on those air-breathing engines. I could really dial in my final landing spot. I'm not very good at landing traditional orbiters. That's why I've got the air-breathing engines on it. They're very, very efficient once you get them into the atmosphere. So I can, if I miss my runway by a lot, I can compensate for it. So let's see if we can do a rendezvous with the station. I've got a whole lot of fuel left in my core stage, and all my boosters have stripped off, but I still got fuel in that core stage, so I'm going to go ahead and ditch it probably when I get to the station. So it's not really a true test of whether or not the orbiter's got enough fuel to circularize itself and deorbit itself, if I'm still using the core stage to circularize and make the rendezvous. But I think in future iterations I'll make a proper orbiter and probably forego the air-breathing engines altogether, or maybe use a Raptor engine. Not a Raptor, but a Rapier engine. Alright, so now that I'm rendezvous basically with the station, I've ditched the core stage, and let's go ahead and use my RCS thrusters and line up with the station. Grab the science points from the experiments that I ran coming out of the atmosphere, load them all into the probe, and detach. And now is the tricky part, dialing in my re-entry so that it's right on top of the KSC or as close as possible. Try to come in facing forward and use the body of the plane to brake. Must have had some issues. I'm gonna try again. Yeah, it's tough getting your re-entry point exactly where you want it. I know there's mods. I'm sure MechJeb or something like that will help. I'm not sure which ones do it, but I just eye it, and sometimes it's easy. It's just to really drop your periapsis sharply near the target, and you can kind of work it that way. I feel like the more gradual you descend, the harder it is to pinpoint. So I'm coming in real steep, hence all the heat. I think even the front wing, the front little fins might have blown off. I remember at some point they do blow off, but there you can see. So I'm totally going to miss the KSC, but no big deal. Let me go ahead and set up an action group to toggle my engines. I've got those air-breathing engines that I can use. I'm also going to use physical time warp so that the flight isn't so long, but there, I got plenty of fuel to deciding that's still a little too far. I think I can get closer. So a little trial and error of getting as close to the KSC as possible, but in my final approach, I'm going to need those air-breathing engines anyway. So another option would be to put some motorized wheels, and it can act as like an orbiter and a rover once it lands on Kerbin, but flying is usually so much more efficient. There's no Kerbals on board flopping around like that, catching some G's. That's another trick with orbiters, is getting the center of mass forward so that the craft stays in that forward facing orientation. What is this, attempt number 4? I'm going to get it at some point. Coming in over the desert. Already getting some heat. Still kind of high in the atmosphere. Now we're starting to drop. Usually in the 40 and 30,000 meter mark is where you, oh, and I got to reset my action groups. But yeah, in that 30 to 40,000 meters is where you really generate a lot of drag and a lot of heat. I'm coming in right on top of the KSC, so an orbiter would have been fine, but I've got my air breathing engine, so I can do laps around this thing if I want to. See if I can land nicely on the runway. First time using this thing, and I've got my chutes, drogue chute. Oh, flipped. Well, I'm close enough to the KSC. If I needed to, I could walk. I could build a rover, but I know at some point I may also want to go out and gather science from further out. So I'm going to build a traditional plane, and I've already got my other plane that I can just modify. And now that I've got some new ports, try to get that design to work. And that design doesn't work so well. I really hate the tail section, and I realized, oh, I've got the new tail section that's sloped at an angle, so it gets the tail further away from the ground. I don't break the tail off on ascent. So you see me testing out my little plane. I'm only speeding up 4 times now instead of 8, because this is the really fun part where I'm using the trick of bringing the Kerbals to the craft. I'm gonna take all the science off of the probe and give it to my scared little Kerbal who's afraid to go out into space, doesn't want to do all the dirty work himself, or herself in this case. Valentina's loading all that science data into the storage unit on the plane. Get the plane back on the runway and just drive. Again, I could have used the rover for this bit. I probably will make a Jeep or something for just driving around the KSC when I don't have very far to go. But I knew I would need a plane, and I think I'll even leave Valentina near the plane for future missions. I'll park the plane here and gather all the science and load it into my station. But before I do that, let me go ahead and recover my little orbiter, get a little bit of funds back, and switch to my station, lower the ladder, and get Valentina in there. So that's about wrapping up this video. But this is the fun part and the challenging. This is kind of what makes the challenge so much fun, is trying to get science down to the surface of Kerbin and using the scientists on the surface to do research. I think at some point I'm also going to take vehicles down to the surface of Kerbin and modify them with EVA construction. I can see myself wanting to do that. But I got a bunch of science points that'll pay off in future missions. They're not going to pay off now. I'm not going to be able to upgrade anything, but hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm hoping to do more stuff like this in the next few videos. Appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you next time.